Sweeping down in over the feature match area. Aerial view, Shahar Shenhar on the left. Josh Utter-Leyton on the right. Let's meet them.
Shahar Shenhar, Israel, 53 pro points last season, playing blue-white red in standard and playing blue-white red control in modern.
Josh Utter-Leyton, United States, Player of the Year, playing Jund in standard and Jund in modern.
All right, far be it from me to disagree.
We just heard it from the horse's mouth himself.
Right. All right, Shahar Shenhar, the youngest player in this event, but he is absolutely on a heater.
Yeah, Shahar's had an amazing last year here, and it's been pretty cool to watch because I don't know if you knew, but he actually grew up in Sacramento, which was close to where I lived.
Right.
So myself, David Ochoa, Josh Utter-Leyton, we actually all played with Shahar when he was like 16, 17 years old,
Nice.
which he used to be a lot shorter and not quite as awesome at Magic, and now he's incredible at Magic and very tall.
Right.
So it's been an interesting evolution.
Okay, he's dropped a Celestial Colonnade on his turn 1, where he went first. Josh has responded with Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, so Shahar does have a Spell Snare here, but the Deathrite Shaman does make things a little tricky because if Josh has a Liliana here, Shahar does not really have an answer. Josh also drew a fantastic card here. He drew Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's Thoughtseize right there. We see a Treetop Village in his hand.
And if you look at Josh's hand, the card he wanted to play this turn was Scavenging Ooze. So now if he wants, he can actually just take the Spell Snare, then play the Scavenging Ooze. He is going to need a little more gas to win this game because even though he has a pair of Treetop Villages, he also has a pair of Overgrown Tombs. So he's a little heavy on the lands here.
Okay, he can generate mana with the Deathrite Shaman in order to cast the Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, so this turn he gets to, if he wants, take Spell Snare, play Overgrown Tomb, Scavenging Ooze, and that also kind of gets the Snapcaster Mage as well. It forces Shahar to either path the Ooze or just know that his Snapcaster Mage doesn't do a whole lot. Of course, a Ajani Vengeance also a potential threat from Shahar if he draws another land.
Right, so we see his hand laid out on the table. Josh taking some notes.
Yeah, if he doesn't mind the Scavenging Ooze potentially getting countered, he could also just take the Ajani Vengeance here because that is the most powerful card. But his pair of Treetop Villages do a reasonable amount of fighting against that. Deathrite Shaman also, of course, can fight against Snapcaster Mage just by eating the cards in the graveyard.
So he has a relatively unusual nickname. Where'd that come from?
Josh?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess his Magic Online name was Raptor. And we didn't actually know who Raptor was for quite some time. And we played against him, and he's like, man, this guy's really good. But then we ended up meeting him at a PTQ, and it's like, oh, wait, you're that guy? So that I don't know where he came up with it, but that is what a lot of people call him.
Okay, there's the Deathrite Shaman eating...
Well, eating Shahar, actually. It looks like Josh just took the Snapcaster Mage and is getting in for one of the Deathrite Shaman.
Oh, he chose to play the Treetop Village. Gonna play the Scavenging Ooze next turn?
He's probably going to save it for when he doesn't get Spell Snared. And since he drew Dark Confidant this turn, he actually might want to just run out both Scavenging Ooze and Dark Confidant on the same turn. So if that ends up happening, he will resolve a second creature here.
So on one of the back tables, we find that Brian Kibler forgot to de-sideboard.
Uh-oh.
So that's a game loss penalty. So he's down a game already against Yuya Watanabe.
When they first led with Watanabe leads 1-0, it's just like,
how? Yeah.
But unfortunately, that is how.
Kibler, yeah. I think the only other way that happens is Kibler mulligans to 0 and Yuya plays a turn 2 Snapcaster and beats him with it.
Yeah, it could happen, I suppose. So yeah, here comes the Ooze. It's going to be pretty tough for Shahar not to Spell Snare it here. Josh knows he has Spell Snare, so Shahar has to be suspicious about that. But the problem is if you don't Spell Snare this, Josh just won't play his other 2-drop, and then you still have this Spell Snare in hand. So it's kind of a tough play here, but even though you feel like Josh is leading you into it, I don't really see how you get away from it.
How you cannot, yeah. Shahar, good player that he is, says, yep.
Yep, you got me.
Yeah. Overgrown Tomb into play untapped for Josh Utter-Leyton, so that he can then cast Dark Confidant.
So now Shahar can either path the Dark Confidant or hope to draw his fourth land and just Ajani it. Either way, Ajani is going to end up dying if he does use the Ajani, so regardless of whether you path or not, it's going to be hard to protect Ajani from Treetop Village. So he really has to decide how much he wants the Dark Confidant off the table. I mean, one way or another, he's going to have to get rid of it. I would be very surprised if Josh got to draw an extra card off this particular Dark Confidant.
So would you have gone for the trying to peel a land for a Johnny?
Yeah, I think just drawing the 4th land does end up a little better there. I mean, you're going to have to end up losing a card. You can also just Shadow of Doubt and then Path, which is what Shahar is doing, which is another advantage for drawing an extra card. You still end up in a situation where Treetop Village pressures you, but if he can wait to play Johnny until he has Tectonic Edge up, then that ends up being a lot better.
Okay, Josh only has 3 lands right now, so Tectonic Edge not viable.
Yeah, but it's going to be hard for him to avoid playing another land here. Unfortunately for Josh, he hasn't drawn a Liliana, which is kind of his best card here, just because Liliana does pressure Shahar's hand, and Shahar doesn't have very many ways to kill it. But it does look like he drew another Dark Confidant, which is a welcome sight. So he decides to go ahead and do that.
Treetop Village, Dark Confidant.
This also leaves up Deathrite Shaman just to start working Shahar's graveyard.
Bolt the Bob, says Shahar.
Yeah, Bolt was a good draw there. I mean, Bolt does kill Dark Confidant, let Shahar keep a Johnny, because he's still got hope of playing a Johnny and having it not die, which is going to be tough in the face of now 2 Treetop Villages, but he might be able to manage it.
Okay, Josh takes the Shadow of Doubt.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to go ahead and exile Shadow of Doubt there. One reason he would not exile Lightning Bolt there, despite it being a kind of more useful target, is that Shahar could have responded with Snapcaster Lightning Bolt, and then Josh would not have gotten the 2 damage in.
Yeah, that would have been pretty nasty.
Yeah, it would have been a lot worse for him. Well, it looks like it's Treetop Village time. Not a whole lot else Josh can do here. He's got to decide which lands to tap and whether to attack with Deathrite Shaman or not, but I think there's enough cards in the graveyards that you really don't need to attack with Deathrite Shaman right here.
All right, so Treetop Village in.
And it looks like Shahar just takes it.
Overgrown Tomb into play taps for Josh Utter-Leyton. Past the turn. Shahar does take the damage, drops him to 12, and he draws another Bolt.
And a Snapcaster to go with it. So he's got some good stuff going on here. He could just kill the Deathrite Shaman if he wants to make sure his Snapcaster will resolve without issue. He can also wait till the Deathrite Shaman gets used and you use Snapcaster there.
He does not have 2 red mana, though, so he can't Bolt, Snapcaster, Bolt on the same turn.
No, he does. He's got a Sulphur Falls and a Sacred Foundry, but it looks like he's actually just going to wait till Josh uses Deathrite anyway.
It is Sulphur Falls.
So he is bolting Josh, and again, Josh removed Shadow of Doubt for the exact reason there that he wants to at least get the 2 damage if Shahar does have a Snapcaster. So he did force Shahar to tap out at that point, but unfortunately does not have a follow-up here besides attacking with both treetops. And Shahar drawing a second bolt means that takes a lot of the pressure off his life total.
Okay, both Treetop Village come in. One of them leaves.
Yep. They rumble over, but unfortunately for Josh, he gets pretty destroyed by that lightning bolt followed up by an Ajani.
Okay, Ajani is going to lock down Treetop Village.
Shahar has to go to the deck list to find out if there are any haste creatures around, but he's not playing against Kibler in his 16 haste creatures, granted in standard, but...
Without sufficient pressure, Ajani Vengeance can be a real wrecking ball.
Yeah. As Josh inquisitions away Electrolyze, but gets to see the Cryptic Command that's going to make it really tough for him to come back here.
Once Ajani gets to 7, his ultimate, destroy all lands that the target player controls.
Yeah, which unfortunately for Josh will usually end up being him.
Dismember a Snapcaster Mage?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to. It's not like Shahar is overwhelmingly, with good targets.
So. Pass turn, Resto Angel into play, so he's really going to protect that Ajani at this point. Go. And we hear that Reed Duke has already beaten Ben Stark in Game 1.
Yeah, it looks like it was a reasonably fast Game 1. Josh actually drew his main deck Deathmark, which is the funniest card in his deck.
There's a lot of targets in this format for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost universally a sideboard card, but it actually makes sense to main deck it here. It's got a ton of targets against Jund, against Green-White, and against even Blue-Red. It's got a couple, though. You wouldn't really want it there.
End turn. Play Snapcaster.
End of turn, he plays Snapcaster,
Yeah.
and he will
And that's
bolt.
7.
Josh's face takes him down to 7. Another Dismember.
Josh choosing not to die to Snapcaster Mage, but I think with Cryptic Command up and a Johnny, Shahar can actually just potentially start a Johnnying Josh, and then when he draws a 5th land, try to kill him with Colonnade.
I don't think I'm resolving another spell.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dead, but I'll just
Shahar's just going to take the safe route and
be on the safe side and
well, there we go. A Johnny up to 7, and then
Go.
potentially Armageddon all of Josh's lands.
There's Garuk Relentless.
Huzzah.
Josh excitedly plays Garruk.
draw.
Shahar now.
Armageddon you.
Oh, Planeswalker Ultimate.
What lands do I have left in my deck?
Josh deciding whether to actually scoop up his cards or just scoop up
Right.
his
He only
lands.
has 2 turns. Celestial Colonnade's going to do 4 twice to him, and he's at 7. And we are going to game 2. Shahar Shenhar takes game 1 from Josh Utter-Leyton.
I did tell you that this was going to be a slightly faster matchup.
Some good rips.
What do the sideboards have in store for us?
We'll take a look
All
at
I
that
had
in a
going
minute
on
here.
was 2 Treetop Villages.
Yeah.
Show off your magic colors by purchasing new Planeswalker apparel at mtgmerch.com. Who's your favorite M14 Planeswalker?
I think the one I like the most is actually Garruk, since I like drawing cards, and Garruk leads the Stampede every time.
He does.
Yeah, he both figuratively and literally does, which is
Yeah.
which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, there's something about there's always something about Chandra. You know, the women throwing fire around.
That she does in spades. So looking at the sideboards here, Josh does not actually have a ton he can bring in, since he does have some pretty cool ones though. Wrench Mind is actually one of the more unique sideboard cards here. It's black. Target player discards 2 cards unless they discard an artifact, which is a very strange card. It's a card from Mirrodin Block, where a lot of people had artifacts in their decks.
Right. So, I mean, why would you play it over? Because it's 1 cheaper than Mind Rot?
Yeah, the black cost is actually really big, so that alone is really what pushes it into the deck. It's actually like casting the bad half of Thirst for Knowledge on your opponent. So he's got a couple of Wrench Minds, he's got a couple of Thruns, and luckily for him, unlike Ben Stark's team, Shahar does have Supreme Verdict, not Hallowed Burial, so Thrun actually is fairly invulnerable once it's in play. He also has a Phyrexian Arena, which is a good card advantage mechanism. So he has those, and then Fulminators actually probably come in as well, just at least some number, just to kill Celestial Colonnades.
Sure. I mean, it's one of the operative cards in the deck. Obviously, it wouldn't help him there, but
Yeah, also Josh has the Dismembers, also the Death Mark, and a number of other like random removal spells that you don't really want against the creatureless deck.
and from the other side,
Shahar has the Thunder Maws that we saw Tom bring in, because Shahar and Tom did test together, as well as Supreme Verdict and potentially Vendilion Click, just because it pressures Josh's Planeswalkers. Josh actually does have a bunch of Planeswalkers in his deck. He has 6 Planeswalkers, which is more than most modern decks, and he is actually even an aggressive deck. So 4 Lilianas and 2 Garruks.
I mean, the Lilianas are certainly something that is a metagame choice with a sufficient amount of control and combo in the environment. You want something to make folks discard.
Right, yeah. Liliana in this metagame is actually more powerful for her +1 than her -2, but the -2 is what lets you play it because it's actually good against other aggressive decks.
All right, so we'll see what these two have in store for us. We'll also be getting reports from Rashad on what the other matches are doing here as they come available. See some numbers that up there on your screen, Josh Utter-Leyton. You can see his @Raptor Twitter tag. 223 career pro points. That's nothing to sneeze at.
No, that is definitely not bad, especially considering his first Pro Tour was in 2008. So he's actually, halfway through kind of his, if you look at, his Hall of Fame period, which is 10 years, he's only halfway through that. And if his second half of his career is as good as the first 5 years, there's no way he doesn't get in.
All right, we see his Pro Tour record, 4 top 8s, and a 62% win percentage. That's pretty significant. We talked about that earlier with Tom Martell. at 63%, Raptor at 62%. That's beating the best players in the world with a startling frequency.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise you to learn that most of the players in the World Championship here do have, a pretty high win percentage at Pro Tours, since that is part of what makes them the best in the world.
Well, that's what, and certainly you had to beat a lot of them to get here.
Right. I mean, Pro Tour performances were probably the single biggest factor in getting here.
A lot of pro points on the line here at this event. So these guys will, 6 of whom are playing the rest of the weekend, will have a chance to set themselves up for status for the coming year.
And this is actually a potential foreshadowing of one of the matchups in the World Magic Cup.
That's right. Shahar playing for Israel and Josh playing for the United States.
Yeah, these are also both the team captains. So if the two countries play and both players are in, they will be the ones playing.
Now, we heard Rich talking earlier about the day 2 with the national teams and the coach. What's your take on which player you put in the coach role and which player you don't?
I think it's going to depend on each individual team, so there is context there. But I think for Constructed, having one of the more experienced players coach is pretty good. I think for Limited, you actually want them playing, because Limited games are so different from each other that you have to be in the game from the beginning to really grasp it sometimes. It's harder to flit from game to game and really know what's going on. Whereas Constructed games, if you've tested a lot, you kind of know how the games play out. You know how the archetypes are supposed to battle, so you do get a good sense, even if you're not playing from turn 1. So I like coaching for Constructed. For Limited, I think you want your stronger players playing as much as you can.
And you got the opportunity to do the coaching last year.
Yeah, I volunteered to sit out for day 2 of last year's World Magic Cup by going 2-5 on day 1, as the rest of my teammates did quite well.
What was the most fun thing that happened as you were coaching last year?
It's easily when we were playing against Brazil and Kibler decked Paulo with the 5 Mind Sculpt sealed deck that we got. Paulo was not happy about that.
I can imagine that he wasn't. All right, we're just about ready to go back down to this match. That's Shahar Shenhar on your left and Josh Utter-Leyton on the right. We will be moving into Game 2 as Shahar took Game 1 on the back of a Johnny Vengeant.
Yeah, he actually ultimated a Planeswalker, which is the first time I've seen that happen at the World Championship.
I'm trying to think if we saw it happen
There were
last year at the Players' Championship.
I think there were less Planeswalkers played last year, so that would reduce the odds of that happening. Since the most common control deck was straight blue-white without Planeswalkers, and even though some of the decks had Elspeth, she doesn't actually tend to ultimate all that often.
No, we did see her ultimate in one of our feature matches yesterday.
Yeah, in the match of Shuhai actually against Reed Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was good there, but I guess this is the second Planeswalker I've seen ultimate. Elspeth's ultimate is sometimes flies below the radar.
Well, yeah, you don't see it that much because if you're using her pluses, you're usually killing somebody with them. With the +3 and jump or the army of tokens that she'll create.
Yeah, usually Planeswalker ultimates just end the game, whereas like a Johnny's did there, Elspeth actually doesn't really. It kind of promotes the game continuing to move forward.
Right.
So.
All right, there's a good close-up shot of the U.S. national champion.
And the player of the year.
And the player of the year.
So there's Johnny Vengeant back for a second helping here.
That's Shahar's hand on your left. That looks like a keeper.
Yeah, it looks like a very good hand. I guess it might be a little heavy on the lands, but I think just mana leak into Johnny is a pretty strong opener.
He's still going to think about it. Good players think longer about things that seem obvious to other players.
Yeah, definitely. Though Josh has actually one of his most optimal starts, it looks like, since he does have the Deathrite Shaman on turn 1.
Had that last game.
Yeah, it didn't help as much last game, but this game he's actually got Phyrexian Arena to play on turn 2, which goes a long way. Since he knows Shahar can't counter it because Shahar's not playing, Mana Tithe.
Right.
And Shahar doesn't really have a good way to get rid of it, so Josh is set up to draw 2 cards for the rest of the game. Well, maybe that actually won't happen.
Bolt the bird.
Yeah, it looks like Shahar drew a Lightning Bolt, which puts a wrench into Josh's plans, though he kind of re-upped Shahar with a Dark Confidant here.
I drew the bolt.
Okay. So Thoughtseize takes...
Keep that hand right on the draw.
Mana Leak?
Yeah, he just Inquisitions away the Mana Leak.
Or Inquisition, sorry.
And which clears the path for a Phyrexian Arena. If Josh draws another black source, though, it does not look like Josh has another black source.
Does have a Treetop Village there.
The player's discussing Shahar's keep, because Shahar did say I kept that hand.
And he draws Cryptic Command.
So I like what Shahar did there. He played a Scalding Tarn instead of playing a tapped Hallowed Fountain, which does actually bluff drawing another Mana Leak or another 2-casting cost spell, because Josh does know Shahar's hand.
All right.
So the bluff doesn't pay off. Josh still plays a spell, but it is something worth doing, and it's something that a lot of players don't even think about.
Right.
I remember watching Paul Chian once play an untapped Shockland on turn 1 to represent Spell Snare and didn't actually have a Spell Snare, and his opponent played around it the whole game, and Paul won because of it. So,
Wow.
I mean, it's not always worth paying the 2 life there, but it is actually a good play every now and then. You have to be playing on someone you know will respect the play, which at the World Championship is actually a pretty safe bet.
There's got to be a fair amount of next leveling going on here during this event.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely play more in-depth mind games here than you can in other tournaments.
Okay, we hear from Rashad that Ben Stark has evened up his match with Reed Duke. They are 1-1. 2 of them will not meet in the semifinal, but I'm sure they're both hoping that they will see each other in the finals. That'll be on Sunday.
Yeah, after the World Magic Cup has concluded.
After the World Magic Cup has concluded.
So Josh flipped a Verdant Catacombs and drew a Swamp, so he's access to lots of black mana now, and has a number of plays here, since he's still constrained on the number of swamps he has, but he still, if he wants to just run out Phyrexian Arena, it will resolve this turn. He doesn't know that for sure, but it is a safe bet. He's thinking about it.
And against a relatively long game deck like Shahar's, Josh isn't really all that worried about his life total with the Phyrexian Arena and the Dark Confidant. He's got a lot of turns before he's worried about how low his life total gets.
Yeah, I mean, Shahar can turn things around really quickly, like end of turn, Snapcaster, Bolt, activate Colonnade, but that's pretty far in the future. And I think that Josh is pretty safe here with Phyrexian Arena for the moment. He is going to choose to lead with an Inquisition, which does reveal a hand of no targets.
And there's another Dark Confidant. So double Bob. How do you feel about playing 2 of these at the same time?
I think it's good, especially against a Johnny. Of course, Shahar drew a Supreme Verdict, which was a pretty nice one.
So, pretty good runners for Shahar in the last few turns.
Shahar does not have a reputation for being unlucky. Let me just put it that way.
Good players make their own luck.
Exactly. But Josh does have this Phyrexian Arena that he's been kind of sandbagging, and he does now, without a shadow of a doubt, know that it's going to resolve.
So does he play this other Tectonic Edge? No, obviously he doesn't. He's got the Catacombs.
Yeah.
The question is, is there a line of play where he plays the Tech Edge, plays the Phyrexian Arena, takes out one of Shahar's lands?
Yeah, that's got to be what he's thinking about now. And if he's fetching a basic, then it's more likely that's what's going on. Since he's going to want to leave up Tech Edge, he definitely doesn't want to tap his Treetop Village, because if you tap Treetop Village, Johnny can just lock it down. So you want to make sure the Treetop stays untapped. I don't think you want to use the Tech Edge for that reason, and because you really do want to save it for Celestial Colonnade. You're not stopping Shahar from casting spells at this point, because Shahar has 4 lands in play, more in hand, and all 4 drops.
And and Josh knows what his hand is.
He knows everything except the Vanillion Click Shahar just drew. So, Vanillion Click is a very good draw, though. Josh can't be playing very many ways to get rid of it, and with Phyrexian Arena out, that is 4 points a turn.
All right, Shahar has played his 5th land. Now he's thinking a little bit. Passes the turn.
Contemplating playing in a Johnny Vengeance there, I'm sure. But Vanillion Click is a slightly stronger play here, mostly because with the Treetop untapped, playing a Johnny doesn't really do that much. You do eventually get to lock down the Treetop Village, but you take a guaranteed hit first.
All right, so Josh draws the extra card. Life total standard and identical, 15-15. As a reminder, this is round 12 action, 2013 Magic the Gathering World Championship. from the Amsterdam Convention Factory and Sauna.
Yeah, they make conventions here. It's the convention factory. So Josh did draw this Fulminator Mage here, which, again, coming in mostly for Celestial Colonnade, but also because it gets to pressure Shahar 2 points a turn, and then if Shahar uses a removal spell, you can then sack it to kill a land.
Second Tectonic Edge for Josh.
Yeah, and he's concerned about this cryptic command that Shahar's representing, and also, possesses.
He actually knows he has.
Yeah, he is aware of that, so he has to decide how he wants to deal with that. I guess just playing a Fulminator into Cryptic seems reasonable since he doesn't really have much of a choice here, and he's got a double Fulminator in hand.
Right.
He can't play both in the same turn, though.
Counterbounce.
Counters the Fulminator Mage, bounces the Phyrexian Arena.
After a brief moment of trying to counter the Phyrexian Arena and bounce the Fulminator Mage, which would have been a good option, too.
Go ahead.
So Shahar hoping to draw a counterspell here or a Snapcaster Mage. Plus, he's got the Vendilion, so he can actually just take the Phyrexian Arena in the event that he does not draw a counterspell.
Go.
He didn't draw step? Yeah. Shahar is reasonably ahead this game, just in the fact that if Josh doesn't draw another threat off this arena, Shahar does have an Ajani plus a click to trade for Josh's cards. And just going into the late game, Shahar's deck is much better. Of course, Josh could also draw Liliana the Veil, which is what he happened to do.
Not rip.
Shahar does not. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so he's able to now kill the Vendilion Click with one of his few ways to actually kill it.
Oh, did not rip. I heard we did not rip.
Now, Josh, continuing to keep Treetop up because of the threat of a Johnny Vengeance. He doesn't want a Johnny Vengeance to lock down the Treetop without getting at least one hit in. And with Shahar at 15, he's not really that close to actually killing him with it.
Go.
All right, Josh passes the turn back. Shahar cracks his Arid Mesa.
Unfortunately, there's no sweet lands to fetch, so there's no Dried Arbor in red, blue, white. And I don't think he's playing Panglacial Worm, though I haven't actually checked. So
He'd still be one short to cast that, wouldn't he?
yeah, and a couple green.
And a couple of green.
He does want to draw Sphinx's Revelation. This deck often does. I mean, anytime you hit 6 or 7 lands in play, that's just at the forefront of your mind whenever you're playing.
I mean, I know playing Sphinx's Revelation is often situation dependent because we saw earlier where Ben Stark played it just for one because he needed to try to dig himself out of a hole. What's your sort of optimal amount to play it for in this deck?
I mean, besides the obvious, as big as you
many
can.
as you can, right.
Basically, once you hit 3, that's a real revelation. 1 or 2 is like a baby revelation, is actually how a lot of people talk about it. At 1 or 2, you're trying to hit a land drop or really dig for something. At 3 or more, you're trying to put away the game. And like 4 is really hard to lose from if you're not dead already.
Right, there is the Ajani Vengeance.
Immediately preying on Liliana there. So Josh considering what removal spells Shahar could have to stop his Treetop Village, and if he wants to Tectonic Edge one of the untapped red and blue lands. Shahar very wisely tapping all of his white mana so that if Josh does want to Tech Edge a white land, he doesn't get to Tech Edge an untapped land. As it turns out, Shahar doesn't actually have a way to stop the Treetop, but Josh still has to try to figure out what he could have and how to play around it.
You see Shahar very stoic there, not giving any information away.
Josh does go ahead and Tech Edge the Steam Vents there. He's worried about Snapcaster Mage by doing that. That cuts off Snapcaster and Vendilion from stopping Treetop Village.
Ben Stark has taken his match 2-1 over Reed Duke. That puts him at 27 points. That means that he will lock himself into second place.
14.
So Josh, going up to 6 mana here, though he's actually running pretty low on lands to fetch. The deck plays like 3 swamps and a forest and 2 overgrown tombs is the only fetchable lands. But he's going up to 6 mana, so he wants to play the Fulminator first, so if he gets mana leaked, he can pay. and then use a Johnny or use Treetop Village to kill a Johnny Vengeance.
Resolves.
Shahar says resolves. Here comes the Treetop Village. Man, that's been a favorite for a long, long time.
Yeah, and Josh is very wisely using the original Legacy version. So Shahar actually drawing Electrolyze. His hand of Electrolyze Supreme Verdict is good against creatures, but Josh is presenting two threats that aren't really impacted by them. He's got Fulminator Mage, which doesn't actually let Shahar draw a card off Electrolyze. And he's got Treetop, which dodges both Electrolyze and Supreme Verdict very well.
Yeah, what's Shahar's answer to Treetop Village?
Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, mainly. Snapcaster Mage can also, copy any of those spells and do it. But right now he's kind of forced into electrolyzing the Fulminator and not drawing a card. That looks like his best option here if he's electrolyzing now.
Which is going to cost him another land.
He could.
2 to you.
So Shahar points at the Fulminator. Is like, yeah, actually, never mind. Let's just do 2 to you. So he is using it to try to dig for a natural removal spell, which he does find.
Look at that. Bang! Treetop Village.
Like I said, they don't call him Unlucky Shahar.
Go to 15. To 12.
Josh getting his Treetop bolted. Then he has to decide whether he wants to play Inquisition here. He knows Shahar has 1 card left. He does not know what it is, but he's trying to narrow down what it could be. So
He is going to drop his second Treetop Village.
Go.
And say go.
has avoided throwing away another Inquisition, which is good. Shahar still has some turns, but is under a clock now. He is taking 5 a turn, and he does really need to draw mainly Sphinx's Revelation, but he would be satisfied with even like a Restoration Angel would be very amazing here. This is the kind of board position where Josh's hand disruption, of which he has a lot of, isn't all that effective because Shahar doesn't have anything. Since Shahar's playing off the top of his library, Josh really just wants to draw threats and not any more hand disruption, despite hand disruption being kind of the card you want in your opening hand in this matchup.
All right, Josh giving things some thought here, and he is going to cast another Liliana.
Yep.
Shahar says resolves. Everybody discards.
So now Josh knows we're in top deck mode. Chooses to discard Inquisition instead of casting it just because he wants to attack with Treetop Village. Shahar wouldn't mind drawing that Celestial Purge he boarded in as well. That would at least kill the Liliana, because now he's kind of facing 3 different threats. But Restoration Angel does kind of neatly answer all of them. Though,
Revelation time.
if Josh ends up plussing Liliana before attacking, that is a little worse for Josh.
And still not really good.
So,
Yeah, Shahar kind of got his back up against it here.
yeah, I mean, a Revelation still does a good job of getting out of it, but he needs it very quickly.
He is at 9, so he has 2 hits from Treetop Village Fulminator Mage before he is done for in this game.
Yeah, and Josh drawing a Deathrite Shaman here makes that even less likely that he gets out of it.
Here they come.
4.
Drops him down to 4.
All right. Shahar's deciding what he could draw, trying to figure out what he wants so he knows how to summon it to the top of his deck. You got to know what you want before you can top deck it.
Right. It's got to be Revelation because even Supreme Verdict doesn't help him that much. I mean, it keeps him from dying next turn, but he then have to draw something else to not die. He's going to take 6 from the Treetop Village alone.
Yeah, Josh is actually going to Tectonic Edge here because Colonnade's no longer relevant, just to make a potential Sphinx's Revelation a little less good. And even using the Fulminator just to knock things down even more.
The 2 life being...
Well, it was relevant. Shahar did draw now a Tectonic Edge, which now means he doesn't die to the Treetop Village. And now, when Josh +1s Liliana, he is going to show Shahar a Wrenchmind.
There's the tech. There's the Tectonic Edge. There's the Liliana. Wrenchmind.
That's game.
And that is game 2. Josh Utter-Leyton evens up the match 1 game apiece against Shahar Shenhar. Looking to ignite. Those are some hot shirts that just flashed up there on the screen for a second.
Yeah.
Looking at your competitive spark? Take your game to a Grand Prix and see how you fare against the best players in your region as well as top visiting Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Warsaw, Oakland, Kitakyushu, and Prague. For more information, visit wizards.com/Grand Prix. You going to all 4 of them?
I'm going to one of them, I believe.
Man.
Well,
Man, you get guy gets in the hall and he just backs off the accelerator.
Well, Warsaw, Kitakyushu, and Prague are all pretty far away from me. Oakland's not.
Yeah, Oakland. Oakland's right around the corner.
And as a matter of fact, I'll actually be doing commentary at Oakland. I will actually not be playing.
Man, you really are backing off.
I'm not, I swear, but it's just these 2 events. So,
Who won between Ben and Reed? Between Ben and Reed, who won?
All right, Shahar asking who won between Ben and Reed, and we know that it was Ben Stark.
Ben won.
yeah. With Josh expresses a little surprise at. I think
For all the marbles.
Ben's hallowed burials actually do play a really big part there. I would be surprised if those did not end up winning him games 2 and 3.
I'm
Interesting.
very jealous of his Halberto.
Any changes to the sideboard here in game 3?
Yeah.
We see Josh looking through his
A little bit better
sideboard.
than Verdict.
Yeah, Shahar knows Josh has a lot of discard, and it's kind of funny that Thundermine Hellkite's bad against cards like Wrenchmine because you need 5 lands in play. But Thundermine Hellkite's also really good just to top deck in an empty board, especially since Josh can't afford to keep very much removal in his deck.
Right. Report from the back table on Crack Reporter Rashad Miller. Craig Wesco takes down his match against Shuhei Nakamura, putting him in the 21-point bracket, all important pro point.
Yeah, he had a very good finish here, going 7-5, netting him a cool 7 pro points, which is like in between winning and getting second at a Grand Prix. The players study the lists, trying to figure out, what would I want to sideboard in? Though I do think since Josh has like the full Fulminator plan, Shahar might not want actually the Hellkites just because double red and 5 mana is quite a bit to ask for. But there isn't a whole lot Shahar does want. Pyroclasm's decent, Celestial Purge is decent. The counterspells are okay. The problem is if Josh looks at your hand every 3 turns because of Inquisition, if he doesn't even take the counterspells, which he obviously can, he can also just play around them.
Yeah, the Jund deck, again, even though this one doesn't have red
Josh
in
called it Jund.
He called it Jund. Who am I to argue? It attacks resources. It doesn't just straight out attack your life total. It attacks your hand. It attacks your mana base. It attacks the creatures you play. It's just relentless at coming after you all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it is a resource denial deck. That's what Wrenchmine and Liliana the Veil really do. So Josh has designed his deck to have all 2-drops and 1-drops like Deathrite Shaman, Dark Confidant, Tarmogoyf, and Scavenging Ooze, and then Treetop Villages and Tectonic Edges to protect himself from when he draws 5 or 6 land, at least a couple of them are actually spells in disguise.
And we saw Treetop Village do quite some work there in that last game.
Yeah, I mean, the Treetop Villages really presented a pretty huge threat that even though Shahar did have the Supreme Verdicts he boarded in, it really didn't do a whole lot.
else is here.
Yeah, I mean, if Shahar didn't
Please.
top deck a
You use How Does I Am, too?
Tectonic Edge
Not as much.
in that game, he would have been facing down 2 Treetop Villages.
Yeah, he would have been dead very quickly as the players request the fans get brought closer since I guess Shahar's not a fan of the heat here.
Every those 2 seconds it comes by, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it is unusually hot here in Amsterdam. And it is quite steamy down there under the lights in the feature match area.
As we watch Raptor display, not his best skill here with which is shuffling.
All right, we're gonna talk a little bit about one of the major cards in Josh Utter-Leyton's deck, and that's Liliana the Veil. Inexpensive Planeswalker to cast. She's only 3, so I mean he can get her on turn 2 a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot of why the deck is playing Deathrite Shaman and has the mana base that it does, which is a lot of swamps, is that you actually really do want Liliana on turn 2. It's one of the most powerful planeswalkers at 3 mana. And there aren't very many planeswalkers at 3 to compete with, but it's pretty hard to get away from a planeswalker that can hit their hand and their board pretty much equally well. Since in this particular metagame, he's looking at killing Reed's hexproof guys and then fighting against the blue-red deck's control hands, because those decks really don't play well when each player is discarding a card every turn. Josh can just play out all his cards and then force the other player to discard their cards. And then, of course, the ultimate is actually very relevant.
It's very mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a fact or fiction.
feels
And
much
apparently has a flavor implications, too. I was
It
not aware.
does. Yeah, representing the cruel
May have
choice that
actually just
Liliana
saved
gave
my
to
life.
Thalia that opened the Hell Vault.
Yeah, and
Good luck.
those 6 Grand Prix winning deck lists, yeah, that is a lot. I mean, Liliana is not a bad card and had a ton of impact in Modern and Legacy, actually.
So 3-drop Planeswalker, Liliana or Domri Rod?
I think Liliana does take the cake there, though her against Jace Beleren is a much closer fight.
Looks like Shahar is going to go to 6.
Yeah, Shahar, not liking the look of his first hand. Josh, we see the Liliana there and the Wrenchbind, so we could be looking at a combo finish here.
How mulligan resistant is this deck that Shahar's playing?
It gets hurt by mulligans a lot more than Josh's does. Let's just put it that way. Josh doesn't need a whole lot of land. All his spells are cheap. Shahar's trying to win the game with expensive spells and attrition, and those really do not work well with a new mulligan. I mean, he has one Think Twice, not even a pair. He has a whole Think Twice, and that can help a little bit. But other than that, he's really got to wait till he hits 4+ mana to really start gaining card advantage. Snapcaster Mage does do a little work, since at 3 mana you can Snapcaster a Bolt, but for the most part, when his deck goes to 6 or 5, it has more trouble recouping the card advantage it loses. Whereas Josh can just play a Dark Confidant or a Liliana off 2 or 3 mana and kind of get back in the game. Or a Phyrexian Arena, as we saw last game.
Right.
Shahar did manage to kill it, which was actually very difficult. He had to Cryptic it, then Vendilion click it, but he got there eventually.
So much magic tomorrow.
You hear Shahar saying so much magic tomorrow. Both of these players, once again, will be playing tomorrow, representing their respective nations. Israel for Shahar, USA for Josh Utter-Leyton. And they have an interesting day ahead of them.
Well, they're going to be playing the full 5 days of Magic, so no matter what, they're showing up back on Sunday.
Right.
So even though Reed and Ben would switch places with Josh in a heartbeat, Reed and Ben are going to be a lot more rested than Shahar and Josh will be, since Reed and Ben get the next 2 days off.
So we see a 2-lander to include Plains Tectonic Edge, but probably a very important Celestial Purge for Shahar.
Yeah, Shahar
Scared of a shadow bat with the
has
planes?
kept a hand without red or blue mana. It's a very keepable hand. I would definitely keep it where I am, but he is going to need to draw Steam Vents or a way to fetch Steam Vents very quickly here. And a Mana Leak is not exactly it.
So Josh, no first turn Deathrite Shaman this time.
No, he managed to go one game without doing that, but he does have a fair number of options. Yeah, Shahar has Lightning Bolt, Spell Snare, Purge, Mana Leak, and Electrolyze, so a lot of good spells, but nothing he can really cast except Celestial Purge.
He needs to get into his blue and red mana pretty quickly. Tectonic Edge for Josh. There's Scavenging Ooze that he knows is not getting mana leaked.
Yeah, he's not too worried about that. Well, there's Steam Vents.
I'll go to 18.
Shahar shocks himself.
Go.
Now he's leaving a number of options open here. And Josh actually wishes he had more land, I think.
He just drew a Liliana. Goyf Liliana. Garuk Relentless, Thoughtseize, Wrenchmine, Treetop Village for Josh Utter-Leyton.
So his hand is very good going forward, but he is only going to be able to play one spell a turn for the next turn or two until he draws another land. Though he could actually just play a Tarmogoyf this turn, and then next turn, and Treetop Village, then next turn go Thoughtseize into Tarmogoyf. So he has to respect Mana Leak, but he's got so many spells that I don't know if he cares too much if he gets Mana Leaked.
Yeah, you have to be aggressive here. You can't just sit back and play around the Mana Leak.
Yeah, I mean, you know Shahar's land light. He already missed a land drop, so at this point you've got to really just hope that Shahar, doesn't have a ton of spells he can cast. So Shahar choosing to use the Spell Snare.
That's a Goif killer.
Yeah. Drawing Thundermaw Hellkite was not really high on Shahar's list of priorities here. Especially facing on a Tectonic Edge in addition to all the other cards.
Okay, turn back to Josh Utter-Leyton. Thoughtseize or...
Well, if it's Thoughtseize or Tarmogoyf, he gets to actually... I think he chooses the both option. He'll go with option C.
Right, there's...
The black mana is still constricting him. He still can't cast Liliana or Wrenchmind, and he's still missing a 4th land for Garruk Relentless, but getting to Thoughtseize into Tarmogoyf is pretty strong here.
Okay, Shahar thinking about this. Is he going to bolt the Scavenging Ooze?
He's either going to bolt the Ooze or just Mana Lake the Thoughtseize.
Yep.
Well, or neither. It looks like he's not worried about Josh taking the bolt, because Scavenging Ooze is only a 2/2 right now. So, and it could potentially go to a 3/3. Either way, Josh is letting Shahar trade a card for his next play, whether it's Tarmogoyf off Mana Leak or Tarmogoyf off potentially getting Lightning Bolted. Though I think at this point, Shahar's not going to be able to do that. He's going to be able to Lightning Bolt the Scavenging Ooze, but then the Tarmogoyf will resolve. So, Josh has pretty much all the say in how this game plays out. The biggest risk for Josh right now is getting his Scavenging Ooze electrolyzed. So it is actually potential that he either takes electrolyze or takes something else and then uses the Scavenging Ooze to grow to a 3/3, since letting Shahar electrolyze your Scavenging Ooze is not something you really want to have happen. But pretty much all the cards here are viable. Looks like he's going to take the Mana Leak.
17.
Yep.
At this point, Shahar's getting attacked, and he can just bolt it,
I'll bolt that guy.
or he could have waited to try draw land for electrolyze. But since he knows Josh,
Yeah.
since he knows Josh has knowledge of the electrolyze, he assumes that Josh is not going to let him just electrolyze his Scavenging Ooze.
And Tarmogoyf is now too big to bolt.
Yeah, it's pretty massive. Shahar's in real trouble here. He doesn't have a whole lot of turns before Tarmogoyf kills him. And if Josh draws a second black, Shahar is actually just going to lose almost his whole hand. Of course, he drew, it looks like a second Wrenchmind instead, which is kind of funny.
Tarmogoyf, Liliana the Veil, Garruk Relentless, Wrenchmind for Josh Utter-Leyton. Life total stand at 17 to 16 in the favor of Utter-Leyton.
Sorcery, creature,
Yep.
land, insect.
Working out what Tarmogoyf is, it's 4/5.
No, actually, it doesn't look like Josh is going to get to cast very many spells this game, because these two Tarmogoyfs are just going to kill Shahar unless he draws a Supreme Verdict or something like a Path to Exile.
No whammies.
No whammies you hear from Josh Utter-Leyton.
No Whammies
It's-
has been called,
It's a Steam Vents.
which does unlock Thundermaw Hellkite, so Shahar can play the always regrettable play of Thundermaw Hellkite Go, but that does keep the Goyfs off his back. He also has a potential of electrolyzing one of the Goyfs and just hoping to draw a burn
Electrolyze,
spell.
15.
Or just going straight to Josh's face. I guess he's just hoping at this point to draw Supreme Verdict over the next couple turns. Shahar's getting pretty close to lethal just off the two Goyfs in the Treetop Village, and if Josh doesn't draw a spell, I think he's just sending him the Treetop Village, or rather a land to play his spells.
That would be 11,
Yeah, so
and Shahar is at 12.
yeah, so it just restricts Shahar from like playing fetch lands or playing lands untapped. Now it's time to start wrenching some minds, I think, or actually it looks like just a Garruk. At this point, Supreme Verdict is.
Oh, Shahar extends the hand.
Well, I mean, even if Shahar had drawn a Supreme Verdict, Josh has lethal there with a Treetop in 2 turns and the Garruk Relentless making tokens.
Okay, so Josh Utter-Leyton takes down Shahar Shenhar. Bringing us back to the booth, I'm Sheldon Menery. He's Luis Scott Vargas, and we are bringing you round 12 action from the 2013 Magic the Gathering World Championships. Championship, there's only one of them
Currently.
currently. So we knew the top 4 was locked in.
Yeah, going into this round, we did have the top 4 already set, but they were playing for positioning
Right.
and pro points.
And Ben Stark did take down Reed Duke to secure himself second place, or second seed, that we knew going in. So now that we've gotten this match down, and we know that these aren't going to be the matchups for tomorrow, what matchup does Josh Utter-Leyton and what matchup does Shahar Shenhar want to play tomorrow?
Well, it's actually breaking well for Reed and Ben, I think, because Ben gets to play against Josh, and even though Josh did just win this matchup with blue-white-red, assuming it's by standings, Ben has a slightly different list than Shahar does, and I think Ben was pretty confident about playing against Jund. He had said so himself, and as we discussed earlier, Josh is playing Jund.
Right. So what's the tipping point card or series of cards there?
It's not that different, except for the fact that Ben does have something like Hallowed Burial instead of Supreme Verdict, which is better in the hexproof matchup than it is in the Jund matchup. But mostly it's that Ben is just tuned against the list. So even though Shahar did lose there, I think Shahar might actually like the matchup too. Just the way one match plays doesn't necessarily give you the whole story. More importantly, though, is the Reed Duke Shahar Shenhar matchup where Shahar doesn't have Hallowed Burial and Shahar doesn't have less answers to hexproof, which is what Reed's playing.
Well, and we saw that Ben took down Reed in this round. Those Hallowed Burials could have been a very significant part of that.
Right. In the previous round, Reed actually beat Shahar. So I think Reed would not mind playing the matchup again.
So there's going to be a lot of exciting Magic tomorrow with the first day of the World Magic Cup. Then on Saturday, we're going to play day 2. Then everybody's going to play. We're going to play a lot of high-level Magic on Sunday.
Yeah, on Sunday we've got the World Magic Cup and the World Championship Finals.
That's going to be, oh man, it's been a long time since we've seen a player that maybe would be playing in the individual and the team event.
Yeah, since the World was separated out a couple years ago, that hasn't happened. But this year, again, we've got Shahar and Josh both drawing live to do that exact thing.
I think there are 4 other players that are also playing for their national teams tomorrow. I believe Willie Edel's one of them. Yeah,
Willie Edel, Yuya Watanabe, and then we also have, let's take a look here. It looks like I think those 2 guys right now in the as well as Shi Tian Lee, and Martin Juza. So those are the 4.
Yep. So a lot of guys that were playing today, they're going to come back and play tomorrow. We have 71 teams tomorrow, so there's going to be all kind of. If you didn't watch last year, it's one of the most fun Magic experiences you'll ever tune in to view. We had a great time with it, but we are done here. I'm Sheldon Menery. He's Luis Scott Vargas. We are done with round 12. We'll see you tomorrow. Back to the news desk.
Welcome back to the news desk. 12 rounds done. That means precisely 0 to go, which is just as well as we come into the start of hour 11 of our day 2 broadcast. Yes, it's 20 and a half hours since we started broadcasting here in Worlds Week, and by our reckoning, there's about another 30 to go, or maybe even more when you think about the matchups for Sunday in the modern top 4. Because no lie, there's going to be a bit of a belter, one for the connoisseurs, as we like to say. Your number 1 seed will be Reed Duke of the United States, and he is up against Josh Utter-Leyton. Because Reed is the number 1 seed, he will choose whether to go first or second at the start of that match, and that means the other semi-final will be between Ben Stark, Hall of Fame elect, and Shahar Shenhar, and that is your blue-white-red mirror. You will see a lot of lands in play and a lot of thinking. Oh yes. So that is coming your way on Sunday. As the guys in the booth mentioned, first we have 71 teams to deal with on Friday and Saturday. We'll get into all that business in the end of day wrap. But right now, I've got a couple of empty chairs beside me, and I think we should do something about that and welcome in, first of all, your reigning player of the year, Josh Utter-Leyton, and next to him, the Israeli national champion, Shahar Shenhar. Well, no prizes for guessing that you 2 gentlemen are a bit happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm quite happy.
Okay. Now, first question, I'm going to start with you, Shahar. Honestly, if this had been a week where you'd gone, okay, Wednesday, Thursday I do this, Friday, Saturday, a little bit of sightseeing, a little bit of testing, lots of sleep, would you have taken that over a million more rounds of Magic Friday, Saturday, or is this turning into the definition of Magic heaven?
This is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's Magic heaven. It is very overwhelming, but at the same time, I would definitely take this. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun playing with the team. I'm really excited about it.
Everyone gets to bring a guest to this event. You've kind of you've broken the format. You've brought 2, dad and younger brother.
Well, actually, my mom and 2 more siblings, but...
See? He's so greedy, it's outrageous. What does it mean to have them here?
It's been great. I mean, they're supporting me. My brother keeps asking me if I want food every round.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, I have to explain to them, what's going on now and then, but it's been great, all the support.
And your younger brother, he used to play Magic with you, right? A little bit.
Very, very little. but yeah.
He's going to kill you for saying that. All right. Now, Josh, let's be honest here. At 1 and 2, I thought one of the highlights of the 2 days so far was actually watching you draft yesterday, first thing, yesterday morning. Your deck looked monstrously good.
Yeah, it was very good.
And then to come out 1 and 2, I mean, you must have. I know you are fantastic at going one round at a time, but coming out of there, you must have thought, what's going on here? Because it was such a great deck.
Yeah, it was pretty disappointing, but turns out I used up most of my bad draws there, so it worked out in the end.
Yeah, you ended up at 3-3 overnight, and we were looking at the standings overnight, and there could have been, theoretically, a 7-way tie for the lead once we came out of Limited this morning. But one of the key things for that was sitting on the right-hand side in Pod 2, while Pod 1 potentially was going to feed in on itself and tighten up. Somebody had the chance in the second pod to 3-0, and if it was a 3-3, for example, a Josh Utter-Leyton, then you were in with a really getting back into it well and truly. Tell us about your deck, because it turned out we didn't really see it. I was in the booth, and we really didn't see your deck. It sounded completely absurd. What did you play?
I wouldn't describe it as completely absurd, but it was definitely a bit of an oddity for the format. I was playing mono blue, almost all fairies. I had a bunch of 3-mana 2/1 flyers with no abilities, trained condors, because all my creatures already had flying. So
yeah, why bother? They all fly anyway, and that is what happens with mono blue. Blue is very deep, isn't it, in M14?
yeah, blue is a very strong color. It's probably the best color.
Okay. So at that point, Shahar, you had a slightly different path towards the top 4 in that you were doing very nicely overnight. You were in great shape, one of the 3 co-leaders. You get out of draft at 7 and 2. Again, one of 3 co-leaders. But because that's 3 and only 4 are going to make it in, those last couple of rounds in Modern must have been pretty scary.
Well, yeah, the first round against Ben was really, really sick. We had a really long game 1.
Didn't you
the
just?
blue-white red mirror, yeah. It's going to happen again tomorrow, probably. He actually decked me. And then game 2 and 3 were a little simpler. He was man-screwed in game 3, and game 2 was a good game, but game 3 was less so.
Yeah.
Once I got my win, though, I knew it was locked, so the pressure went off.
I don't want you to give anything away at all, obviously, there's far too much at stake. But for the people at home who have not necessarily seen a lot of blue-white-red mirrors, and let's face it, there aren't enough hours in the day to see a lot of blue-white-red mirrors.
Especially when it's untimed.
Exactly. Just give them a guide to some of the things. What should they be looking out for to try and work out what's happening? Because it isn't necessarily about life total or, oh, look, there's a big creature, or I've killed that big creature. What should they be watching out for?
They should be watching out for whoever has the land advantage and whoever has the hard counters in the sideboard as in their hands as Counterflux and Dispel.
Okay. Josh, for you, you're about to go up against the Mox champion from 2011, Reed Duke. You're the player of the year. Tell us a little bit about your matchup. Again, don't give us anything you don't want to, but just to set up for the viewers at home, what are they going to see in your matchup in the semis?
Sure, it's basically for me all about keeping a creature off the table. I can't stop all the enchantments, so my goal is to use, discard and Liliana's to keep a creature off the table.
Okay, and at that point, if there are no creatures, all those enchantments do precisely nothing, and it's just dead draw after dead draw after dead draw.
Exactly.
That seems pretty straightforward. What wasn't straightforward was the way these 2 gentlemen made it to the top 4. Congratulations, of course, also to Ben Stark and Reed Duke, who are there. So, we're going to leave these gentlemen here. It's time now, because we finished 12 rounds, time for the end of day wrap.
Till tomorrow.